start, this won't be relevant for all of you, but there's some phase 0 stuff. For some of you, there's a law of what I sort of describe entrepreneurial gravity. It's the law of 5 ones, that the fastest way to success is actually one market. If I was an American, I'd yell, the riches are in the niches, right? One market, one ideal client profile that's suffering one problem, that you've got one product or solution for, that for at least 1 year, you can choose whatever time frame. But often what happens is people experiment for a week with this and it didn't work, so I'm going to go somewhere else. What I actually find is that almost no one ever listens to me, so that's fine. But you're just going to have to decide how much of this advice you want to ignore by how many markets, how many ideal client profiles, how many problems, and how many products. Just keeping in mind that every additional one of these that you choose to add dilutes all of your energy. So if you're actually going to go after 2 markets and there's 3 clients inside there that have 4 different problems and I've got a suite of 5 products, my experience, and I think Aaron would agree with what we see with portfolio, is it's the total opposite with success. It's 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, or maybe it's 1 and 2 and 1 and 1. Now we look at really successful companies and say, shit, they do a whole lot of things. They solve a whole lot of problems. Yeah, but when they started, they didn't. They built up the capability and capacity to achieve it. So what I really want you for today is that even if you've got, yeah, but I serve multiple markets and there's a number of clients and they've got I solve a number of problems and I've got 2 products, I'm asking you just to concentrate on one for the purpose of the time that we're going to come together. And then you can choose to ignore it after that. Then this little 4-quadrant map, which is probably the shittiest version of a 4-quadrant map you've seen, but some of you are going to have an easier life than others, right? And some of you, if you've got a product that is really direct, and what I mean by a direct solution, like if I've gotten in trouble with the law, I need a lawyer, right? Like it's a direct solution. There's no indirectness to it. I need a lawyer. To do my taxes, if I can't do it myself, I need an accountant. If I want to drive from A to B, I need a car. Like it's really direct. But then there's indirect solutions. And so I used to be in the coaching consulting world, and it was sort of really difficult because it's like, if you follow this process and this method and we do this work as a team and we get your team performing really well, then we will be able to achieve performance outcomes and some profitability. The thing that I'm selling creates an indirect outcome that the customer wants. And that's a really hard world, especially with, say, coaching and consulting, they can do nothing. They can just stick to the status quo. Versus if I'm in trouble with a lawyer, well, I can't do nothing unless I just really want to go to jail. And so what I'd like you guys to do is sort of just look at your product and you can add all sorts of things. Are you really direct? Like, is it a tangible outcome? Do people agree that the need is accepted? Or actually it's indirect, it's intangible, and I've got to bloody educate them as to why this need is accepted. You know, can customers do nothing? Are there very few alternatives? And then the non-relationship means that I need like relationships to sell it. Like venture capital, as an example, what we do, we can't ever be in the unicorn space because in order to investors to give us money, they've got to really trust us. We've got to spend a lot of time going and building those relationships. So we can't get to that status, but maybe some of you can. So I'll just sort of pause on that one. Who's got a business that they'd like to just quickly plot and unpack in the context of this, just to get some thoughts and some feedback or learning for others? Now, the way I run these sessions, just so you're aware, is we do it on a what we call democracy basis. It's democracy for 3 seconds, and then it's dictatorship after that, and I'm the dictator. So people can democratically volunteer, but after that, I'll just choose someone.
Well, Don, I can.
Okay, great.
Farm management systems for niche areas of agriculture. And there's an awful lot of farmers who are capturing data on paper and crunching it in spreadsheets and getting completely lost.
Yeah.
They can keep doing that, but that is a road to non-sustainability as a farm. And it's a fact that farms are getting bigger and bigger because you need to be able to manage this data. And we give them a direct solution that does exactly that and enables them to manage their operations better within their existing scale or to scale up.
Right. So you all things being equal, if you weren't strategic, you sort of live in a world where they can do nothing. They can sit on their ass, continuing to handwrite stuff and live in a spreadsheet. There's alternatives. They can use a spreadsheet. They can use a pencil and paper. They can use their brain. They can use nothing. Right.
They can use a clay tablet or an abacus, which they did 5,000 years ago, and they're not far past it.
They can put some stones sort of out there. And they're probably sitting in a world at the moment, at least, where the need isn't yet accepted, if they're still doing that. I definitely see how it could be a direct solution, but you sort of have a little bit of indirectness in that if you use my system and you follow this process, then I'll get you better farm yields. And so the point being, what you've got to do with your messaging and your product and your sales strategy is you've got to go up and to the right. You've got to get away from anything that allows them to do nothing, that you've got to differentiate to make sure that you're seen as the only alternative. In my humble opinion, try and make sure that it's not relationship driven. You want to be up and to the right. And what that means for some businesses, especially around, there's often some HR tech that has the biggest challenge in some of these things. There was someone that came on the mission with us in June. And what we were discussing there was what we need to do is if you are really broad, like I'll solve all your problems, well, what we've got to get is up and to the right to a single really direct problem. And for him, it was all about staff retention. And he then started to get really nailed down to my clients are actually not everyone who needs an HR system. My clients are the people that have a staff retention problem and they are looking for a staff retention solution. And my messaging was going to be as direct as possible around that. And we were going to put a lot of effort into making sure that there were very few alternatives to that solution. And he was going to sell it in a manner that didn't require a high trusted environment. So it's just good sometimes to analyze that. Any other comments either on this one, on this page here? Anyone wanting to unpack that a little bit if they're stuck on, yeah, but I need multiple? Is there anybody that?
Don, how do you get around defining markets sometimes? So if we think about like a customer profile, you could have a nurse, like we sell to nurses, versus we sell to medical staff. How kind of strict do you get with that definition?
And look, the entrepreneurial creativity always tends to go the other way. It's like, yeah, I've only got one market. It's like people that work in the CBD. Like it's
exactly.
It's one single market. Look, there's always a little bit of a dance here, and it's what we see with companies we're evaluating. Is the market has to be as niche as possible from a messaging point of view, but big enough to actually have a business that can scale. So if it's nurses, it's nurses that have certain demographics. Now we don't want to get down to nurses that are 4'2" missing a leg, because that demographic is a little bit too small. But at the same time, maybe is it all nurses, or is it actually general ward or that kind of thing? And if it is medical, if you're actually saying, well, it's medical staff The only fear I would have with that is that different types of medical are going to have different problems. And before you know it, you're going to have this really confusing message. Now, how do you get around that? Well, if you've got scale and you've got resources and you've got cash flow and you've got all those things going, well, you can segment your business. You can have many landing pages. You can have many marketing strategies. You can have multiple resources. The problem is, until we get those resources and that momentum, if we go too early to lots of those people, we then don't get the critical energy to get the traction we need to get all that cash flow.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Don, Andre had his hand up as well before. I think.
Sorry, Andre?
You wanted to add to that?
Yeah, I just felt it really resonated. I've gotten us into a situation where without traction in any of them, we've got many offerings for many types of clients, which is, and I sort of was like, wow, how do I, but letting a bunch of them sit passively, you know, on a landing page or somewhere down the funnel, but focusing each of these on one for a campaign that we stay with for a long time. That really resonated. You said that, I went, fuck yeah, that would work. The others don't have to turn them off, but don't need to.
Yeah, you don't have to go and tell people to go and get stuffed, but if they fall into your funnel, great, no problem.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Daryl, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, we're, I guess, trying to mimic the effect of lightning and grow plants quicker. The issue we have is where we're going to point the ray gun first. So we're going wide because we just don't know which is going to stand out. So we're looking at probably 7 different types of plants and then waiting for one to pop out and then try and be disciplined to go narrow and really nail that.
Look, yeah, all models are wrong. Some are useful. So just keep that in mind. And this is a life cycle location challenge. So yes, to begin with, it's ready, fire, then aim. And nothing from here at that really early phase of the life cycle. Yeah, you've got to go and do those things. All I would suggest is what can sometimes happen is the entrepreneurial energy stays in that mode for too long because we get little signals. Oh, could work here, could work there, could work there. But actually, whichever the thing is that pokes its head up the most, then just double down on it and see if you can get that bugger to grow at the expense of others. And either that really works, or like a lot of founders, you've got to go, shit, okay. And the 1 year may be too long. All I'm saying is often we give up a little bit too early, but sometimes we stay a little bit late. Maybe it's a month or 6 months, or it depends on your industry, because sometimes to get traction, you actually need 10 years. So yeah, nothing I'm saying here gets rid of that early entrepreneurial. And look, you know, Nigel on this call, and Nigel, I think you'd agree. You Canopy, your product now is a product of testing a whole lot of different things that you then found out didn't work, and then you created something, and there was a bit of a smell, and then you doubled down on it, and we're here now.
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah, if you were to start dividing your energy and going into other markets, you'd probably have a bit of a challenge. That's all.
It was actually part of the problem to start with. We were trying to look at a bunch of different, like it was an expense management kind of system to start with, and we look at a bunch of expenses. And the problem was that we found it was really fucking hard to solve every one, and so it took as much effort to solve every one, and so kind of focusing on a single one made it much more like tangible to actually do it, find the customer, deliver on the customer, get the revenue, all those kind of things. But it took a bit of pain to get there for sure.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is a bit foundational. Hopefully, it's still helpful. There's a couple of things in terms of the building the founder scale stuff. I'm just thinking through my experiences to try and make it relevant for that. Sometimes what I find is that founders bring on new resources to scale and give them a new market, a new place to go and try and generate sales, but actually you need to double down on what you're already doing, in my humble opinion, because that's how you're going to get some of that transition. because then what happens is that new person with the new market that's got to learn all of those things, they inevitably fail. So that's one thing I'm thinking of. And then in terms of the induction of those new resources, being able to spend bulk time with them with something like this. This is our market, and really spend weeks understanding that. This is our ideal client profile, and actually having real energy and intention on each of those layers. Whereas sometimes what happens, we bring these new people in real quickly because we're trying to grow sales, and it's just learned by osmosis. But if you can, on all 4 of those items, make sure that your induction process really goes deep, you're going to find some people that hopefully can get a little bit more clued up faster. And just remember, you're on this call because all of you are founders. If it was easy, everyone would do it, and everyone in the world would be as clever as you. But just remember, you are clever as fuck that others aren't, and so you're going to have to spend a bit more time with them, helping them raise their knowledge. All right, no other, and this deck will be emailed to you, by the way, so you can plot away and have a
One other quick thing, Don, just might be helpful to anyone. I actually found doing the exercise you just spoke about to onboard sales staff was a really good exercise, because it forced me to try and be clear and know exactly what we were for every one of those things. And so even if you aren't hiring, I think doing the exercise as though you needed to onboard a salesperson actually like forced you to be able to explain exactly what are those things, like how do they go out and find that customer. It was a really good exercise for me to do to identify all of those people with real clarity, and that kind of clarified all the messaging for me.